Welcome to this introductory video on how to manage data access in REDCap. This video will walk you through the different ways you can control who accesses data in your REDCap project and how you can download data in REDCap. The purpose of this video is to introduce data access and downloading using REDCap. By the end of this video, you should know how to create and assign user roles in REDCap, know how to create and assign users to data access groups or DAGs, know how to download data from REDCap and where to generate reports or statistics, and know where to download the field comment logs. First, we're going to review how to manage REDCap user or teammate access to data in REDCap. This is a very useful feature if you're working on a large team project with multiple or different roles, or if you have sensitive data and you want to make sure that you've limited access to that data. To control user access to the data and degree of data access, click on User Rights on the far left navigation pane. You'll be directed to the User Rights page. This page provides a summary of all the users who have access to your REDCap project and what kind of access they have. It's also where you can add users or change access options for existing users. There are two options here. You can add users and give each user custom rights, or you can create roles, such as, for example, a research assistant, and then assign users to that predefined role. To create a role, start by entering a role name, for example, research assistant, then click Create Role. This will bring up a window that shows all the possible options for data access. On the left side at the top are the higher level privileges related to whether a user can modify project design and being able to set user access. That's followed by privileges related to data export. This includes whether a user is able to export or download individual data and whether that data is de-identified or not, or whether a user can see or download only aggregate data, for example, in the form of reports or REDCap-generated summary statistics. Then there's other privileges, which includes access to survey distribution tools, including participant IDs and scheduling features, data import and data quality features, being able to access the REDCap app or allow data collection offline using the REDCap app, privileges related to project records, including creating, renaming, and deleting participant records, and finally, privileges related to locking measures. Back at the top on the right are privileges related to what REDCap data can be viewed, which is independent of whether data can be downloaded. No access means that a user won't see a form at all. Read only means they can view participant responses but not change or download them. View and edit surveys means a user can both view and edit participant data. And then if a survey is enabled, there are options that allow users to edit survey responses supplied using a URL link outside the REDCap app. Note, however, that you can't restrict user access to forms or data files based on whether the data is an identifier or not. You can only control whether they can download identifier data. So if you need to keep identifier information invisible to certain users, we recommend designing your project so that all of that information is captured in a specific form or survey, and then you can control who gets to view that specific survey. Once you click Save, the new role will appear within the user role table. You can edit the role at any time by clicking on the name. That'll bring you back to the edit window. Note that you can also copy the role for easier creation of multiple roles or delete the role entirely. Once you have a role defined, you can then assign a REDCap user to that role by typing their username into the Assign New User to Role box and then clicking Assign to Role. When you click Assign to Role, you have the option of notifying that user by email that their access has been added or changed. To assign a role, you select one that you just made from the drop-down menu and click Assign. Once you do that, the user's name will appear next to that role in the table. Note that if you have multiple users with the same role, their names will appear next to the role name in the table. To change a person's role, you can click their username and select either Remove from Role, which will remove their assigned access, or Reassign to other role. Note that if you remove the user from a role, they will still have the same user rights, just not under that role. They will appear separately in the table. This means that if you want to remove a user completely, you'll need to click on their name again and click Remove User. Only then will they not be able to access the project anymore. If you want to give a user custom access or don't want to define a role first, You can do that by typing a username into the Add New User box and clicking Add with Custom Rights. This brings up the same Add New User screen, but instead of creating a role that multiple users can be assigned to, you are defining the role for that specific user and that user only. Note that when you do create custom access for a specific user, a new option appears on the Add New User screen. Specifically, you can now add an expiration date for the user, past which they won't be able to access the project. When you click Save, the new user is again added to the user table, but this time they don't have a role name next to their username. But otherwise, the same holds for custom and role access. You can see their user privileges summarized in the table and edit those privileges or remove them from the project by clicking on their username. Finally, you can also save yourself some time by using the Upload or Download user buttons. This option will allow you to download a list of users, but it also will allow you to upload a list of users and their roles. So for example, if they're similar projects. The User Right tab allows you to assign access to forms or data and specific REDCap features. But it's also possible to assign access to groups of participants, called data access groups. This feature is really handy if you want to assign access right based on groups of participants, such as would be the case if you have multiple site data collections or have multiple community partners using the same REDCap tool. To assign data access groups or DAGs, you can either click on the Data Access Group tab or you can click on DAGs on the left side navigation panel. Say, for example, you have data collection occurring in Edmonton and Calgary, and you want each team to only be able to access the participants that they recruit through their site. To do that, you first need to create a DAG for each site. To start, type a group name, so for example, Calgary, into the Enter New Group Name box and click Add Group. The new group, Calgary, will automatically be added to the Data Access Groups table. Note that the table shows you what users are in each group, or what users are not assigned to a group, the number of records or participants in each group, and the option to delete that particular data access group. Once a DAG is created, a user can be added to that group by clicking the user under Assign User, then selecting the specific DAG and clicking Assign. And the user will now be listed next to that DAG in the table. Note that there are additional DAG features and steps for assigning participants to specific DAGs that are beyond the scope of this video, but be aware that DAGs are another option for controlling user access to groups of participants. Finally, let's discuss accessing data by calculating statistics, creating reports, or downloading the data. Note that each of these options is controlled by the user rights options, so depending on access, not all users will be able to see or do these features. To begin, click on the Data Exports, Reports, and Stats in the left side navigation pane. There are a few options here. First, it's possible to do some basic analyses and summaries of the data in REDCap, although be aware that REDCap does not correct for missing or incorrect responses. To view reports, or summaries of responses, or summary statistics, you can click on the respective buttons on the table. Note that these options allow users to access aggregate responses, but not individual responses, which is one way to give some data access privileges to some users while still protecting participant identity and their total responses. For most of us, though, what we want to know is how to access or download the individual level data. There are two options for that. You can download all the data in a project, or for larger projects, you can download data from specific instruments. To download all the data, click on Export Data. There are several options in this new window. You can pick what format you want data exported in, including data formatted for various statistics software. You can also control whether the data is identified or de-identified. And again, there's several options here that cover a range of possible identifiers. First, REDCap can remove variables that were labeled as identifier variables when questions were created or as tagged in the data dictionary. Or if you want to keep those variables, REDCap can hash the values in that identifier variable to make them unrecognizable. REDCap can also remove free-form text, for example, notes or paragraph variables. And REDCap can also de-identify date and time fields, either by removing them entirely or shifting the values systematically. Other options include whether the DAG identifier is downloaded, if applicable, and survey identifiers and timestamps. Say that we want to export a basic.csv or Excel file with labels. To do that, select CSV/Microsoft Excel with labels and click Export. That will bring up another window where you can click the file icon and download it to your computer. Alternatively, you can also email this file using the Send Data File feature below the file icon. Let's also download using SPSS, Common Stats software. When you select SPSS and click Export, a slightly different window appears. You're given an SPSS syntax file, a data or .csv file, and a pathway mapper. You need all three of these to open the file in SPSS, so save each of these to one folder. First, run the path mapper, and note that the instructions on how to continue are also shown on the screen when this file is run. Then open the SPSS syntax file and click Run All. When the syntax is done running, a new SPSS data file will open that is untitled and that contains all the data you downloaded. And finally, although this is beyond the scope of this video, there are other download options in REDCap, and these can be accessed by clicking on the Other Export Options tab on the Data Exports, Reports, and Stats page. From here, it is possible to download the entire REDCap project, data and all, which can be used to clone the project in another instance of REDCap. It is also possible to upload data using the Data Import tool in the left side navigation pane. And it's also possible to download a PDF of all the measures and all the responses in those measures. And finally, in a previous video, we discussed how it is possible to save comments for specific questions and specific participants. So for example, if you need to add more context, or if a participant response doesn't quite fit into the options allowed. Those field comment logs are not included in the data download. So if you want them, you need to go to the Field Comment Logs page. To access the Field Comments log, click on the link on the left side navigation pane. And if you want to export the log, click on Export Entire Log. You'll be able to save it from there. And this concludes our introduction to data access and export in REDCap.